Good morning and welcome back to Orchestra. I'm so glad to see all of you here today. Just like last week and the week before, I'm sitting in a Zoom session right now, so if you have questions or you're confused about anything from this video, please feel free to drop by. I'm just hanging out for you guys to answer your questions, so please come see me. Don't just stew in silence. It's not worth it. Come hang out. Today we're going to be moving forward with some music theory stuff, but before we do, I do have one announcement. You'll see this week for our Ancient Conquest recording that's due next Friday, I've provided you with a click track. A click track is like a metronome, except it's specifically mapped to the different tempos of the piece. Because this song has two different tempos, this is probably the easiest way for us all to get a recording that moves at the same rate. I want you all this week to record a full recording of Ancient Conquest. I'll provide feedback and then we'll do another recording. When you do this, the best way for you to do this is to have two devices. One that you're using to record either audio or video this week, and another that you're using to play the click track. Plug headphones into the one that you're using to play the click track, stick them in your ears. That way when you record the audio, I don't hear the click track, but you still do. Capiche? Caposh? Cool. Let's move on. Last week, we introduced the idea of tonal harmony, and then we talked briefly about the elements of pitch. I talked about high versus low, where it is on the keyboard, things like this. We talked about clefs and accidentals, and then we moved into major scales and major key signatures. If you had problems last week with the worksheet, which some of you seem like you did, that is so critical to what we are going to do moving forward. So if you need extra practice, just let me know. If you have questions from last week that you just didn't get something, please reach out and let me know. Come jump into the Zoom session. It's going to be so critical moving forward that you understood what we talked about last week. If you don't, it's like if you didn't understand addition in math, you would totally not be able to do the next step, right? So please make sure you know what's going on. If not, come talk to me. Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about two different things. We're going to start by talking about minor scales and minor key signatures, and then we're going to close by talking about scale degree names. Minor scales are the counterpart to major scales in Western music. We talked about how tonal music has usually major and minor scales. Minor scales are the other side of the major scale. I'm not going to say that they're the opposite because they're not, but for us, they often sound like the opposite. Major scales are the ones we're probably the most comfortable with. They're the ones we play in orchestra. They are the ones that sound like this. We often talk about major scales as sounding happy. Minor scales are the ones that sound sad. They sound like this. Of a sadder feel or a more depressed feeling, and that's because of some specific patterns that are happening now. We're going to talk about it in a second. But before we do, you have to know that musicians typically talk about or practice three different types of minor scales. The three types are the natural minor, the harmonic minor, and the melodic minor. So there are three different scales that we're going to talk about, and therefore three different whole step, half step patterns. Get yourself ready. Now, you can see or hear from that first scale that I played, it was a C major scale, that we've got the whole step, half step pattern of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. A minor scale follows almost the same pattern, except the third scale degree, the sixth scale degree, and the seventh scale degree are flat. So if we took the major scale and we made the third scale degree, the sixth scale degree, and the seventh scale degree flat, we would get the pattern whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So a minor scale is whole step, half step, whole step, half Musicians don't often, I will tell you the truth, musicians really don't memorize the minor scale whole step, half step pattern. Did you ever memorize the whole step, half step pattern for minor scales? Yeah, Mr. Long says no. That's because you can just relate it to the major scale. It's a flat third, a flat six, and a flat seven. Now, please do remember that this is just the natural minor scale. The harmonic minor scale is personally my favorite. It's like the natural harmonic, the natural minor scale, except the seventh stays raised. You can think about it as a minor scale with a raised seven, or as a major scale with a flat third and a flat sixth. So it sounds like this. This is the one that sounds the most like Arabic's not a thing. Arabic or Egyptian to us, Middle Eastern. It's got that augmented second in the top. It's really pretty. Yeah, super fun. So we've got so far the natural one, which has a flat third, a flat six, and a flat seven. The harmonic, which has a raised seven or a flat third and a flat six, whichever you want to think about that. And then we have, last but not least, the melodic minor. This one's probably the most confusing. It has two forms. It has an ascending form and a descending form. It's different going up than it is going down. On the way up is like a major scale, but with a flat third. So like this. But on the way back down, it's got the flat seven, the flat six, and still the flat third. Natural, harmonic, melodic. Melodic has two different types, going up and coming back down. The three minor scale types are basically related to two different major scales in two different ways. So they can be related to their parallel major. The parallel major is the major key that starts on the same note. I've been playing C major and C minor. These are said to be parallel keys because their scales are parallel. They move up and down the keyboard at the same spots. There's also another way to talk about minor scales in relation to major scales. They can also be talked about as relative majors and minors. So a relative major and minor are two scales that have the same key. So we've been playing C minor. It's got a flat third, which is an E flat, a flat six, which is an A flat, a flat seven, which is a B flat, and then we end on C. So we've got three flats in the key of C minor. You have E flat, A flat, and B flat, which we know is the key of, oh, wait, can anyone figure it out? I'm not gonna tell you. I want to know if anyone can figure this out. So if we've got three flats, B flat, E flat, and A flat, what key are you in? What is the relative major key? I'm going to ask you in the Zoom session. But to give you a complete example, C major has no sharps and no flats. Its relative minor is A minor. A minor also has no sharps and no flats. Now, this is important. Get ready. We always talk about the relative key of the natural minor scale, not of the harmonic minor scale or the melodic minor scale, because then things get wild. You always refer to the natural minor scale when you're talking about a relative key. So C major and A minor are relatives of each other. They're said to be relative keys because they have the same key signature. A major and A minor are parallel keys because they have the same starting pitch or the same tonic. Hopefully that all makes sense. Okay, minor key signatures also follow the natural minor scale. We never use the harmonic minor or the melodic minor to define our key signature. Regardless of what scale a particular piece uses, it will always be the natural minor key signature at the front. So the last thing for today is just to know for natural minor scales in general, the final thing you need to remember is that the key signature only talks about the natural scale. If you're going to spell any of the other forms, you have to use accidentals. So if I'm in A minor, I have no sharps and no flats on my key signature, but if I wanted to create the harmonic minor, I would have to write in a G sharp. You'd have to use an accidental to create that sharp note. Otherwise, it just wouldn't exist. So those are the important things. I don't think I have anything else to say to you about minor scales. You have a worksheet for class today. It is only on scales and key signatures, referring only to minor scales and key signatures. That's what you need to finish before you come to class. Please make sure you get as far through it as you can, but do your best work, yes? Make sure you're actually answering the questions completely. Fill it out with pencil, please, just like math. Mistakes get made. It's better if you can erase them, yes? That's what you're doing for class today. The next thing we're going to talk about are scale degree names. Musicians talk about the different notes in the scale as having formal names. It helps us when we're talking about chords to have a common language. And so today we're going to talk about these, and next week when you come to class, I have a little quiz that I'm going to have you take just identifying different scale degree names. So the different scale degree names are the tonic, the home note, tonic, the tonal center, it's the tonic, primary note, tonic. The next note above it is the supertonic. The prefix super means above, so above the tonic is the supertonic. Third note is the mediant. In the key of C, E is the mediant. So we've got C is the tonic, D is the supertonic, E is the mediant, and then we have the fourth scale degree, which is the subdominant. The subdominant is related to the next scale degree, the fifth, which is the dominant. So the dominant and the subdominant, sub meaning below the dominant, right? The dominant and the tonic are the ones we talk about the most often. When I talked about you writing your melodic compositions, this is what I was referring to. The tonic is your home note, and the dominant is your fifth, or your most open sounding note. It's the question and answer, the dominant and the tonic. In the key of C, the dominant is G. The next note is the submediant. I'll talk in a minute about how the mediant and the submediant get their names. That's kind of weird that the submediant's up here, but the mediant's way down here, right? So then we have our leading tone. The leading tone is called the leading tone because it leads us back to the tonic, the eighth or the first note, right? Because it's a big circle. So we've gone from do to do, tonic to tonic, and in between we have tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading tone, tonic. Had to think about that for a second. There you go. Those are all of the scale degrees. They're important because we talk about them so often. And when we talk about the chords, we're going to talk about those names much more frequently, especially the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant. Those ones are very important. The submediant and the mediant get their names because of their relationship to the tonic up here. If we look at this tonic, if we put the dominant up here and the submediant down here, the dominant up here and the subdominant down here, my brain is exploding again. If we put the dominant here, the subdominant here, and the tonic here, you'll see that the mediant comes halfway between the tonic and the dominant, and the submediant comes halfway between the tonic and the subdominant. So it's this weird esoteric thing where the submediant is the lower middle note of the two tetrachords. Remember, we talked about tetrachords really briefly last week. Tetrachords are just groups of 4 notes. So in every scale, you've got groups of 4, right? In the first tetrachord, you've got do, re, mi, fa, and then in the second one, you have sol, la, ti, do. Yeah, so those 2 tetrachords make up the dominant. You've got the dominant, the subdominant, and then halfway between you have the mediant and the submediant. That's why they're called that. What a crazy time. Okie dokie. If you have questions, I'm in the Zoom call. You can find the password on RunWeb. You will all be joining me at 9 o'clock. I will see you there. Excited to see your work. Let me know if you have questions. Don't forget to record Ancient Conquest this weekend. Next week, today you have measure 1 through 13 due. Next week you have a full recording with click. Yes? Lovely. See you guys later. Bye.